So what we're going to do today is spend a little bit of time at the beginning with just some announcements, like I'll be on the same page of what's going on and what's coming up the rest of this week and next week. Then do a little bit of this slide set about the innate and non-specific defenses until 1. And then at 1, I want to do some reviewing and some going over the scenarios to get ready for Friday test. So that's our plan for today. So 1 p.m. I'm going to put my watch here, make sure I stop at 1 p.m. So schedule, we will have a test on Friday. It will probably be an 80-point test, so kind of shorter. It will not include anything that I did not teach so far. So those of you that had to miss yesterday, there is a review sheet somewhere and it's got a line through some stuff about inflammatory response. So I'm going to save that for the next unit because that's a big, important deal. And we'll do a little bit of immune system stuff. Whatever I talk about today can be on the Friday test. But anything I don't get to today will not be on the Friday test. The other announcement is that next Tuesday during lab time, we're not going to meet in lab, but we're going to meet in the upstairs of the library to hear a panel of faculty and staff to ask them questions about how they maintain focus and attentiveness as a nurse or as someone who cares for patients or someone who gets interrupted all the time. And so that's going to be a different day. And I'll remind you on Monday, but we'll be in the library on Tuesday for about an hour. And then we will probably come over here and I'm going to talk about parasites the rest of that time and assign you guys your parasites for presentations so that you can start working on that. There'll be a few other schedule shifts of what the lecture topics are for the next exam, but I will let you know those a couple of days ahead of time. So any questions about scheduling stuff? Okay, so yes, exam on Friday. There's also going to be my husband's class, which is a small class, joining us, and they're going to be taking exams too. So we will all actually fit in here. And theirs, they have to write a lot. They don't have any drawings. It's like scribbles. We have different exam styles. So they'll be in here at the same time on Friday taking exams, and so don't let that faze you. Okay, so we're going to start a little bit now on immune system, human immune system. And we've talked all this time about what are the microbes like and how do they harm us and how do they infect us and where do we find them in the world. And that can be kind of alarming and disgusting and depressing. But now we turn to the flip side of why don't we get sick more often than we do? It's because we have this amazing immune system. And we can divide immune system into 2 branches. One of them is called innate or non-specific, and the other one is called acquired or specific. And the way that these 2 branches act is very different from each other. So I start with this one, and we usually have about 2 days to talk about this one. And then we move to the acquired or the specific. Probably you had this quiz at some point. Does it look familiar? Okay. So those are the answers to this quiz. And all of these aspects go with the innate or the non-specific defenses. Okay, I'm going to turn lights off for this slide. And this flow chart that has a very small font is incredibly helpful to use as an overview and later on as a review figure when we learn about all the parts of immunity. But I want to use it now to draw on. And if you were going to print one slide in color for the upcoming unit, it would be this one, like full page color, use it to study now, use it to study in nursing school. It's an incredibly helpful slide. So what this is doing is describing host defenses, which we could call immune system also. What are our defenses against infection into two giant branches? And the first one is innate or non-specific, is what this says. And the other branch is acquired and specific. And there's kind of a division for how these act. And each of these divisions has different parts of our body or processes that help protect us from infection. So when you look at these pink boxes going across the bottom, these are either body structures or body cells or body processes that help protect us. And we use, we kind of use these different structures, cells, and processes in a certain order to fight against infection. And so they're called lines of defense. And so the middle of this diagram is describing what is our first line of defense, second line of defense, and third line of defense. Yeah, defense. In what order would microbes encounter these different barriers to them as they're trying to infect us? So lines of defense are like the order of obstacles that microbes must get past to infect us. And the lines of defense start at the portals of entry. So every place in our body where there is a portal of entry that a microbe could infect, we have defenses at that spot. Some microbes can get past those, some can't. So the lines of defense are going to begin at the portals of entry. And we'll get to some of them today, and maybe not all of them today. So our innate and non-specific immunity is equal to or includes the first and second lines of defense. So these are what are the microbes going to encounter as obstacles first, and second, the first and second lines of defense are included within innate immunity. What do they have to get past first? So this slide, I come back to it pretty often, all the way through the immune system. So we're going to look at today this part here. So innate immunity, first line of defense, which are basically barriers. And we can go ahead and write here the word barriers to infection. Seem okay? Okay, so this is the part, what we're about to write here is going to appear on Friday as a question. Describe the characteristics of innate immunity. So that's pretty much a memory thing. So we're gonna take some time on this to describe what is innate or non-specific immunity like, and how does it act? So we're gonna start with the word innate. So our defenses that are part of innate immunity are present in us from a very young age. Innate almost means like you're born with it. So these are structures or processes in our body that will work from the time that we are very, very young. We don't have to take time to develop them. Because we don't have to take time to develop these defenses, they are going to act immediately to help prevent infections. So we're pretty much born with these defenses. They don't take time to develop. They can be active immediately. These defenses, do not. They don't depend on our immune system learning to recognize specific pathogens. Or specific microbes, let's say. So that's where the non-specific comes from. These are based on general recognition. Of common microbial structures. And that's why it can be fast. We don't have to have time for our immune system to learn what's attacking it and then make a defense. It's already ready. It's basically some kind of barrier to general microbial infections. This is going to give us a weak but fast defense. So the fast is coming from, this is acting immediately. This is already present in us. It's going to work, it's going to help, but it's not the strongest immunity. That's the acquired or the specific. And then the final aspect of this is because it's barriers, because our immune system is not learning something specific, it does not create immunological memory. It does not create immunological memory. And we learn what that is when we get to the acquired specific defenses. So this is kind of a memory list. The question will appear on the test, kind of like this slide is. It will say, describe X number of characteristics of innate non-specific defenses or innate non-specific immunity. And it's probably like 4 or 5. 2 points each. So it's a pretty big question. And the nice thing about this is that the acquired or the specific immunity is basically the opposite of all of that. So this one acts quickly but weakly. It's a general recognition. We're born with it, and it's mostly barriers. So I might put that in parentheses. This is mostly barriers at the first and second line of defense. So what we're going to look at in the next 10 minutes is what are some of the barriers that we have at the portals of entry to the body. But this is key, not just for this test, but like for nursing. Remember innate immunity characteristics. Okay, so everybody have this. Amaya and Alicia are going to watch the video, and I hope that that is visible on the video. If it's not, quickly get notes from somebody. So what we're going to look at next is some examples of barriers in the first and second lines of defense for innate immunity. And the first set are just physical barriers, and these are in some way like walls. And these barriers are related to stuff that you learn in anatomy and physiology parts 1 and 2. So for some of you, there might be some of them that are new, but probably all of you have heard of some of them. So one of the best physical barriers are when you have an epithelium of cells that are joined together into a sheet. That cell layer is not that easy for microbes to get through it. So every epithelium in your body is like a wall that's hard for microbes to get through. Skin, if it's healthy and it's not ripped and you don't pick it yourself, is a really good barrier because it has stratified multiple layers of epithelium, and it's got all that keratin protein, dead cells on the outside, and that is not easy for microbes to get through. So if you do sit down on a toilet seat and there's microbes on it, most of us hopefully have intact skin on our butt, and actually microbes are not going to pass through there that easily. And then when you go take a shower, you wash them off. So skin epithelial barriers are great. So we're very familiar with skin because we see that on each other. The other barrier that we need to add on to this are mucous membranes. So we have skin on the outside, dry parts of our body, and we're familiar with that as a barrier, but we also have epithelia that act like skin on the inside entrances of our body.
Can this go on the chemical barrier slide?
Mucus is a chemical barrier, but the mucous membrane, I need to put an O in there. Mucous membrane is a physical barrier, but mucus is a chemical barrier. If you're looking ahead, it is a little bit confusing in that way. But you have mucous membranes in your mouth, down your throat, in the vagina, in the urethral opening, at the rectum. So it's a skin, it's a epithelial lining that also is not that easy for microbes to get through if the lining is healthy. That's another barrier. And then you have other important cell lining barriers, like one that makes up what we call blood-brain barrier. And this is another tightly connected lining of cells that prevents most things from moving from the blood to the brain and serves as a physical wall against microbial infections. So all of those things are physical barriers: skin, mucous membrane, blood-brain barrier are physical. In some way, having a layer of healthy microbes on top of an epithelium is even added protection. So here we've got an example of skin with deep dermis layer on the top, epidermis layer that's got multiple layers of cells, and then healthy mix of microbiota. So this is showing a cartoon of what is the skin of a normal person like with their particular mix of microbiota versus a person who has eczema, and they still have a mix of microbes, but they have way more staphylococcus than person with healthy mix. So really, our healthy microbes, our normal flora or our microbiota are also adding to our physical barrier to prevent infection. Okay. And the other excellent physical barrier that's not a wall but more of a flood is flushing mechanisms. And the flushing mechanisms are also at the portals of entry. So most of our portals of entry, where microbes could be trying to come into the body, there is some kind of liquid coming out of that place that's acting like a flood or a waterfall that the microbes have to go against to actually get in the body. And so we think of these things as kind of like gross, or these are people's body secretions, these are people's body fluids. Yeah, but they're protective because they're making microbes swim upstream if they're actually going to infect the body. So we've got tears, or the flushing mechanism of the eye. What's the flushing mechanism of urinary system? Urine. Like, we think that urine is gross. Urine flowing out of the urinary system is protective. And the people in the world who tend to not take bathroom breaks often enough and not drink enough so that they don't have to go to the bathroom are nurses and K-6 teachers. I can leave this class, go to the bathroom whenever I want. I usually don't, but I could. And if you are not having frequent release of urine, you are more likely to get a urinary tract infection, which then adds to your time management problems as a nurse. So tears in the eyes, urine in the urinary system. What about upper respiratory? What's the flushing mechanism there?
Like coughing and sneezing?
Coughing and sneezing mucus. Coughing and sneezing mucus, that's a flushing mechanism. Vomiting is a protective flushing mechanism, actually. That one's not as common. Vaginal secretions are also protective, as well as for men, urination and like flushing of semen, but they use the same tube for everything, so urine is the more protective flushing mechanism. I feel like I'm leaving one out, like earwax. Earwax technically is a flushing mechanism also. It seems too solid, doesn't it? But eventually it's supposed to dry up and fall out, so it's a flushing mechanism. And then last slide before we move to reviewing. One of the special flushing mechanisms that you have is the combo of mucus getting flapped up through the upper respiratory system. So your trachea, upper part of your trachea is lined with cells that make mucus, and they have cilia that flap upwards. So you can have microbes that get caught in the mucus, and eventually that mucus comes up. We don't feel it, but it comes up, and then you feel it and you cough and either spit it out or swallow it down into your digestive system and destroy it in stomach acid. And that's called mucociliary escalator. And that's helpful to as a flushing mechanism for your upper respiratory system. Okay, so chemical barriers and everything that comes after, we will put that on exam 4. But if there's a physical barrier that I just talked about just now, that can be a multiple choice on this Friday exam, because it's not that complicated. So, so what to do next is let's take a look at the review sheet for this exam and do some review, and also go over some more of those scenarios. So we'll talk about how the exam is going to be structured. And this is also a good time, if you have questions about previous notes or previous slides or notes that you got from somebody, you're not sure what it means, because I know how that goes. Like, what is this? What is this? This is a good time to review those things also. Okay, so for those of you that had missed yesterday, this aspect, number 4, about inflammatory response and signs of inflammation, that will be on test 4. I'm not saying to not ever know that, I'm saying not yet. So it's going to move to test 4. And then these other ones, I will kind of describe how that thing is going to appear on the test. Okay. So this one, the 5 periods of disease, that's going to be a question that's a multi-part question. And then the A part, it says, draw a graph that describes the 5 periods of disease, label the axes and the periods or stages. And then parts B through E underneath are asking you questions about it. Questions about those stages. And together, that's probably 15 points or something like that.
So hypothetically, like it could ask us on the last part of that question, like for instance, like when's the best time to see medical care when people mostly don't, that would be the prodromal period, like something like that.
Yeah, things like that. So the stuff that we wrote around the graph, or saying that prodromal is when people actually start to feel bad,
okay.
That type of thing will be in the questions underneath. But the A part, to draw the graph and label the axes and label the stages, that's like the biggest amount of points. at the top, and then the questions underneath are like 2 points apiece, kind of like y'all are used to how I do the questions by now. So that's what that is. And this one, make yourself a note maybe that it starts with incubation. And at the end moves to convalescent. That's the 5 things that one is talking about. Because there's too many sets of 5 in this class. Okay, next one. 5 stages of pathogenesis. Remember, this one is from the human standpoint. How does the person feel? This one is from the microbe standpoint. What is it doing to make an infection? And this is starting with exposure at the correct portal of entry and moving to, at the end, transmission at the portal of exit. So it's that list of 5. That's not a graph, that's a list. And in your notes, those 5 things, it will say, number 1, exposure, number 2, attachment, number 3, sorry, adhesion. Attachment is the virus one. I tend to get them mixed up. Probably if you all called it attachment, I would accept it. And then invasion, infection, and then transmission. Those. There is a big section in the middle of those notes about virulence factors during the infection and invasion. And that stuff about virulence factors, that's multiple choice type of stuff or matching type of stuff. And it comes in the middle of that note set, like as a few slides that come in between number 3 and number 4, but that is going to be those things down in here. So don't get too hung up on what like collagenase does or botulinum toxin or something like that. That can be multiple choice, but this is a list of those 5 stages. And I think there might be some questions about the 5 stages, like down in the multiple choice or something, but listing the 5 stages, that will be part of the test. This will be a list or a description, like what are the characteristics of innate immunity? It's fast, it's weak, you're born with it. It's not specific to a specific microbe. It's mostly barriers. That's from today. And that's a big-ish question, so. Like if I were gonna do keywords, and I'm not asking you all for keywords, but if you just get the keywords, that's helpful. Put this in a dark marker, hopefully. So we're born with it. It acts fast. It's relatively weak. We don't create immune memory from this. And I know I have not described what that is yet, but go ahead and memorize that innate immunity doesn't get it done. Put some commas here. It's not aimed at a specific microbe. And we could add on, it's the first and second lines of defense.
So on the test, this basically just asks us, like literally the same question, like what are the major characteristics?
Yeah. And I don't actually like those kind of questions, but
And we just put down.
that's how I asked this
Do you
question.
want us to memorize all of these to get full credit?
Yeah. Like I pick out a certain number. How many is that? 1, 2, 3.
So,
I usually have you say at least 4.
If we get all 6, Will we get extra credit for it?
It depends on how I feel. And it depends on like the overall class grades on this test, but usually not, for something that's kind of straightforward like that. And then on test 4, you have that exact same question about this. Because that is like the baseline beginning of learning about the immune system is those distinctions. Are we talking about acquired? Or are we talking about innate? Stuff that I don't know if there's going to be a matching. I can't tell yet. So what I'll do is I go through the notes and I look at specific terms that don't appear elsewhere on the test already, that are in the notes, and I see if, are there at least 7 that I can do a matching question? And if not, I will put some of that stuff into multiple choice. But a lot of the matching was stuff that I didn't get to in innate immune system so far.
So we're not doing
Yeah, we
matching?
just-
There probably just be more multiple choice a little bit and less matching. Do you hate multiple choice?
No, I hate matching.
You hate matching?
I hate multiple.
See, I feel like matching
mess
should
up-
be easy.
You mess up one and then
It
you're.
messes up all of them.
Yeah, like,
I would rather
one
have
goes out the window, you're like,
Okay.
you get 2 wrong, it's actually 4. Like,
Yeah.
at least with multiple choice, it's like I mess one up, it's like, all right, I'm done, next one.
Matching is easier for me to write. So have I used a matching yet in this class?
Oh, wait.
With the guy, the
The first exam.
history guys? Yeah.
I like that one. 'cause I-
Matching there's a pretty big matching section on exam 4. And then for your all's parasite presentations, I asked those as a matching. So it won't be on this test, but it will be on the next 2. So if you hate matching, you can kick that can down the road. But there might be, like anything else that's not included up here can be in multiple choice. So I'll just see. But I probably don't need to write new ones, but take away old ones that I didn't talk about yet. Any other questions about this stuff before we look at infection?
So for number 5, the extra scenarios, do we get the word bank?
Yes, you do. Yes, because there are so many definitions. And here's an example. Like if I don't put zoonotic on the word bank here, there's going to be a multiple choice about it. So I probably don't get every single definition in the infection scenarios, but they do come in multiple
But
choice.
either way, the words are gonna be on the paper somewhere.
They should be. So multiple choice, that's going to include maybe not all 4, but like endemic, sporadic, epidemic. Those appear in multiple choice, not here usually. So the terms in the word bank that I put on the test are pretty much the same ones that you've got in your practice paper, practice questions.
What are the infection scenarios?
So they are in Canvas as a practice questions. I had some handouts of them yesterday.
She wasn't here.
Yeah, I know. So in the modules, in number 3, there are infection scenario practice questions is where these are. And what these are, you're gonna have a word bank on the test, and it's about that many words. It's maybe got 2 or 3 more, but not vastly different than those number of words. Whoop. And you have scenarios underneath that are describing some type of infection or infections that someone got. And you pick out which words up here go with that description down here. And so on the whole page, I think I give you 4 or 5 scenarios, might be 4, but they've got more description than this. And so maybe on the whole page, there might be actually 27 correct answers. But I will want you to have 20 of them or something like that. So I go through and I make the key and I determine like, okay, this scenario has this many words and this scenario has this many words. And I kind of aim for, if you get 2/3 of the correct word matching, that's full credit for this. And then if you have extra ones that are correct, it becomes a bonus.
How many come with one normally?
It depends. Some of them have more than others, but they usually, like if you don't have 4, keep looking, I would say.
So it's like 4 or 5 per question?
Yeah. And the whole page is, like, this is 1/4 of the test.
So basically just need to know the definitions of those,
And apply them.
infections, and
Yeah.
then just be able to like, okay, like this is applied to this scenario, because.
Where do we find the infections? Like all,
So those are in the notes. They're spread out in different spots.
like
so-
in like the PowerPoint notes or like?
They're probably on the board notes. Hardly any of them are in the PowerPoint notes.
What are the points?
So like the stuff that I write in a marker. So like those gingerbread man things with the dots, some of them are there. I know, I feel like y'all missed all of this, but you just have to keep moving. You just gotta keep moving. Some of them are on the gingerbread man, some of them are, there were maybe like 5 yesterday. And then some were from, Monday. So they're kind of spread out in different spots. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. There's a word bank and you can kind of figure out. And then this is one test. This is one test on one day in the semester, so keep moving.
You might have already said this, so I'm sorry if you did, but so for like the scenarios that you give us, are you gonna like put how many should be?
I don't put how many should be there. They're not all equal. I try to use most of the words in the word bank. You can use them multiple times. Like primary, you better be using that one frequently.
Still gonna be the same amount of questions and it's still gonna.
I think it's 4 questions, but they have better descriptions than these. So these are questions that I used to use, and I thought that they were too short, and they don't tell you enough to actually know what's going on. So some of these are better than others, and we went over some of them last time, but let's work on the ones that we didn't look at last time. It's like starting with this B. A nurse gets malaria from a mosquito that carries the blood-borne parasite Plasmodium falciparum. So we've got a mosquito, we've got a single infectious agent, and it's in her blood. And she got it from a mosquito. So I'm gonna scroll up to the word bank. Oh, we can pretty much get that. Get these all on the same screen, actually. Okay, so start with mosquito. What does mosquito tell you about the, it's a vector. Yeah, and vector, I think, is on your all's worksheet, but not this one. So we've got a vector. Anything else from the mosquito that we could apply to this word bank?
Vector transmission was under indirect.
Vector transmission is indirect. Yes. There's another one that's jumping out at me.
I don't think this is it, but primary infection.
There is a primary. Yeah. There's always a primary infection, so.
This is for B.
This is, B. There's a primary infection.
Horizontal.
It's horizontal because it's not passing in a parent to offspring manner. It's horizontal. What about the bloodstream part? What does that tell you?
So systemic.
It's systemic, yeah. And the other one that you could put is zoonotic. I think I took that off of your all's worksheet. But remember, zoonotic has something to do with the animal, so zoonotic could be one.
So could you put that on the test?
Yeah, so my approach is, I try to be generous in assigning points. So if you put something and it's not like super obvious from the scenario, but it could have been that way, I will usually count that as a correct answer. But for example, on this one, if you put that it was vertical transmission, it's really unlikely that this is vertical. Like, we're not having something move through placenta or breast milk or semen or egg, so it's not vertical. And that would just be wrong. But also, if this one had technically 6 answers, if you got 4, that's good. So it's kind of a judgment call about how much guessing you want to do. So if you guess ones and they're right, it becomes a bonus. But if you guess one and it's wrong, it's minus a half per wrong. So choose all that apply. Yeah, what's another one? I don't like this one that well.
I'll make
Wait.
2 for that.
It does not have, you don't know enough about chlamydia. It doesn't have enough detail to really know much that's going on there.
I put vertical and then primary, and then I didn't know if it would be, yeah, direct, and then that would be the only, I got 3.
It is vertical, it is primary, it is direct.
That's for
Those are the ones I-
Yeah.
But like to know the rest of it, you have to know, well, like where does the baby have chlamydia? Is it in their eye? Is it in their blood? You can guess where the mom has it. It's in her reproductive tract, but you don't know enough. I mean, I hope you don't so far know that much about chlamydia to answer that question. So I try to, like the actual updated questions have more with diseases that you're more familiar with or we've learned about in class, something about them. So let's look at a different one that's a better question. I guess D. Okay, so someone gets athlete's foot from this one fungus in the shower, and so far it's just between toes on one foot. Okay, so I'm gonna scroll back up. So far, this infection is local. What else could we say about it?
Would be direct, wouldn't it? Because you're coming in.
That's a tough one. Like, how long ago was the other person in the shower? It's likely indirect.
Oh, yeah.
This is most likely indirect.
Yeah.
Like if someone bizarrely rubbed their foot on your foot and they have that would be direct, but that's probably,
All right.
This is probably indirect. There's a primary. There's a primary. There doesn't seem to be a secondary because I'm only mentioning one place in the body and I'm only mentioning one microbe. It is horizontal. This did not depend on parent to offspring.
So what is horizontal?
Horizontal is, you can assume everything's horizontal unless it comes through placenta, breast milk, sperm, or egg. Or like literally the process of giving birth.
Yeah.
And most things don't happen that way. Like if my child sneezes in my face and I get their cold, that's still horizontal because it could have been anyone that sneezed in my face.
Egg? Raise the breast milk was unfair.
These are in the notes that you need to get from somebody yesterday. Or watch the video, right? I made a video yesterday. Yeah.
Is it on there?
Did I post the video? I think I posted the video.
I know there was a,
Video question.
I know you made a link thing for it, but I don't know if it was on there or not. 'Cause I didn't look. I can't remember.
I'm gonna look.
This is on the one that we made ourselves, because it wasn't posted the first day.
Yes, okay. So the video from yesterday is in the Canvas module and it says 10/22/24 video, and that's gonna have notes from yesterday that we wrote on the board, so that can be helpful.
You have videos from Monday and yesterday,
I didn't make a video Monday for this class.
My days are.
I made a lot of videos for all different classes this week. And they're running together.
No.
Me and Candace are tight buddies right now.
That's good.
Oh my god.
Would that?
And then when it goes to my recent of like history, it's like can't.
Would it be a FOMA also, since it's coming from an object like the shower?
I would count fomite because it could have come from the tile. Yeah.
Okay.
Fomite would be a reasonable. And so probably on that one, it would be just those 5.
So would vehicle be?
Oh yeah, you all have vehicle.
Yeah.
The vehicle, yeah, if you put vehicle, water could be a vehicle.
Okay.
Could you? Oh, there's no way.
Or could you tell me what a FOMA is, because I have all of them, it comes from an object.
Oh my God.
Yeah, fomite is an object, a thing that can have microbes on it. And it's something that's not food, air, soil, or water. Like a thing, it's like a thing that you would wipe with a Clorox wipe.
Or wash.
Or wash it, or put it in the dishwasher.
You said it isn't?
Are you looking at your, I hate how people look on these, and I hate that they're like, awful.
Because I'm looking at my gingerbread man and my.
It's not on that, right?
It's not, no.
Okay, have we done F? Did we do F? F is a really good one, I think. So let's do F, okay. Let's do F. F, let's do F. Okay, so young lady has a UTI. They find out she has Proteus infection. She gets antibiotics. She starts to get better, but then she gets a yeast infection. What'd you say?
She's having a tough time.
She is having a tough time, but this happens so often. It's unfair. Okay.
We wrote it on, like, we actually typed it because we didn't have that slide.
This was after.
Okay, so on the young lady that's having a tough time.
This is.
What infection?
A mixed infection.
It is, she does end up with a mixed infection.
Okay, I'm gonna use. You got 2 things at once. Gotta
You
be-
chose 2 things at once, and what else does the 2 things tell you in this scenario?
Secondary.
There's a secondary. There's a primary, there's always a primary.
Oh, so there's always.
There's always a
So I
primary.
got at least 1 point.
And usually people don't talk about primary unless there's also a secondary, but technically there's always a primary. And in this one, there's a secondary because the yeast infection was indirectly caused by the other infection, making that happen somehow.
Would there not be a primary infection?
Sorry,
Would there ever not be a primary?
not on my test. Yeah. So, yeah, I like to be like primary to kind of get you going. What else on this one?
Horizontal.
Is it horizontal? What was her primary? It could have been, okay, it could have been horizontal. I didn't say that. I didn't say how she got the Proteus infection. If she got it from sex, it's horizontal. If she got it like from her own gut, it would be neither. But you don't know that. But if you put horizontal, I would count that. It's not vertical. And you can get a Proteus infection from sex. So,
Anything sex related is horizontal.
So it's like
Yes.
anything that I'm like, I sneeze on you, or I like do any.
if she got it from sex, is it direct or indirect?
Direct.
Direct.
Unless it comes through.
What's the next one?
Oh, wait. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Local or systemic?
Systemic.
Could be, I hope not.
Oh, I got you, systemic.
What did I say about it? Vaginal yeast infection is local. Local. Local.
Why do you have one problem down there? And it's another problem.
Actually, I'm doing right now.
Like,
So my advice about these, do you have another question about this one?
Would it be focal? Because there's two technically, like it moved, but it's two different infections. So does it count as?
They individually didn't move.
So it wouldn't be then. Okay, that's what
So my advice about these generally is just take your time. Take your time with it. There's gonna be about 18 or 20 at least right answers on that whole page. So-
Gonna be 4 individual questions of like.
I think so. I think so.
Like you said, 18 questions.
No. Four well-described ones is enough to hit most of these things.
And you said we'll only have to have like about 4 for each, correct?
Well, they all should have at least 4, but some of them have more than 4.
Okay, but as long as we have 4, we're gonna get the majority of it.
Like, if you had 4 per
Unless we
question and there's
forget a
4,
major one.
there's 16. And I think like 20 or 18 is the number that they're,
Okay. Yeah. Have a
see,
nice
it's
day.
gonna be okay. We're gonna talk about that next week. Like, you do need to make it up, but there's not really a time pressure on that.
Well, I was
That
just
makes
thinking.
sense.
Basically kind of. So like.
Next
after the
week?
Lab, kind of.
What's y'all's next week like?
Our next week is. Because we're not making it to conference, I'm not having
I'm
positive
not
mindset.
I think that's realistic. I wouldn't classify it as negative.
It's just, I have no positives anymore. We've lost all the games.
You tied some.
We tied 2 and won 1.